Welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, and joining us in the studio with some very big news, Joe Sempolinski. Joe, thanks so much for being on the show. Man, my camera's all screwed up.
Oh, we're all good?
Yeah, that must have looked really great.
We're good. All right.
Sorry about that.
Well, it's tough to make me look good, so we'll do what we can.
Hey,
I'm happy to be here. I'm in the hot tub here in the Hesselson Studios on Market Street.
Live.
We're very
in person.
excited.
So, the big news on Friday. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I've announced that I'm a candidate for the New York State Assembly this year in 2024. The current assemblyman in the 148th Assembly District, Joe Giglio, announced on Friday that he's going to retire at the end of his term. He's going to finish out his term and finish the term to which he was elected, which expires at the end of this year. So he's going to be there for a while. But the petitioning process, the ballot access process to get on the ballot is starting next week. So you're seeing a lot of people in state government making these type of decisions as to whether they're going to run again or not run again or run for a seat or whatever. And so I announced I represented that entire area of that assembly district during the time that I was in Congress. So this is Western Steuben County, Allegheny County, Olean, so Canisteo, Wellsville, Olean, Salamanca, Gowanda, that sort of area going into the western portion of the southern tier. It's the district that I live in, district that I'm raising my kids in, and it's where my entire life's been built. And I'm really excited about it. I'm excited about this opportunity to serve. The response from the people has been overwhelming.
Yeah.
I'm happy that people remember me because I was their congressman for such a historically brief period of time.
Some
but
people
it seems
think
like
you
some
still
people
are.
do. Well, that's nice. All right.
I get that sometimes.
Oh, that's still the guy? All right, that'd be nice. Well, Nick's doing a great job,
He is.
I support Congressman Langworthy. But I'm excited about this opportunity to serve. And this is something where I think I can really give back in a unique way, where I know that entire district very well. I'm used to being in a situation where I'm serving in a tough environment. Obviously, Albany's tough for conservatives, but I was able to be effective even as the most junior lame duck short-term congressman in the minority in a long time, and we were still very effective. You were a big part of that.
Do you want me to come out of retirement? Is this what this is?
Well, no, I think you're doing great here.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you're always, my door is open to you for whatever I'm doing. I mean, if I'm running a hot dog stand, you can stand there right next to me. But I would say that we were able to prove what we did when we were in Congress, our whole team, that we can be effective. And I think I would love the opportunity to bring that skill set and that experience to the state legislature and stand up for the folks of the southern tier and push back a little bit on some of the crazy things that come out of Albany, because there really are some bizarre policies coming out of there right now.
When I want to talk about that, but it is kind of amazing. I think about it sometimes when I'm having conversations, how much you were able to accomplish in under 4 years. I'm not just doing this to brag you up.
4 months, not
for
4
4 months,
years.
4 years.
It was under 4 years, there's no doubt about that. Yeah.
No, but it was really remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, I think it translates to this because the reason I was able to be effective there was because of the experience I had being a staffer. Same thing here. I've been an assembly staffer here for the last year. And so I could hit the ground running. There was less of a learning curve. And when you're on a short schedule, you can't spend a bunch of time figuring out what you're doing. And on this front, it'll be very similar. Again, overlapping geography, a lot of the same people, a lot of the same issues. So it's something where we can have the same effectiveness as we did in the House of Representatives.
And I think it's interesting at the time, people thought you were just going to kind of sit there for 4 months, and boy, you proved them wrong.
Yeah, I think a lot of people thought I was going to see the monuments.
Yeah,
and,
take some pictures.
Take some tours, take some pictures. But you know, Washington, D.C. is a wonderful place to work, and it was a fun place to work. But I was there to do the job, both in D.C. and at home, importantly. As you know, we did town hall meetings in every county in the congressional district. We handled, as the staff and the whole team, handled hundreds of constituent cases. So there's multiple aspects of the job, not just what happens at the Capitol in Washington or the Capitol in Albany, depending on what level of government you're at. But there's also what happens back home, which is crucially important, where you can really impact people's lives day to day if they're having a problem with the federal government or the state government or what have you. So I took it very, very seriously. I hope people noticed that when I was there, and I'm going to take this job, if I'm lucky enough to be chosen by the people, just as seriously.
Is it going to be difficult? And I know we've talked to Assemblyman and we talked to Tom O'Mara, being that the Democrats have the supermajority there. How are you going to handle that day one? Because it's almost like, and it's frustrating for all of us that are watching, it's frustrating because it's almost like we're already losing right off the jump.
Yeah. No, and that comes with the same experience I had. And
Right.
I've had this joke with Congressman Langworthy because, my whole time there, I had to deal with Speaker Pelosi.
Right.
He's had multiple speakers, but they've all been Republican. So
Could have a couple more.
Yeah,
before
who knows,
South
right?
Sudan.
Yeah. But it's a situation where he's able to serve in the majority, which that's better.
Yeah.
But when you're in the minority, you can still be effective.
Of course.
I was able to prove that, again, under very high difficulty level circumstances. So there's multiple things you can do. One, the people from this area want you to go in there and vote the values of this area and make sure that the folks from New York City or from the other larger metropolitan areas in New York realize, hey, what's going on in Cattaraugus, Allegheny, and Steuben County matters. The laws you're making here matter, and have that input. And when it's a bad idea, to vote no and tell the world why you're voting no and tell the world why what's coming out of Albany is a bad policy. But also, if you're able to be an effective voice, which I think I can be, you can take more reasonable Democrats aside and say, hey, listen, all right, maybe this idea works in the Bronx. I don't know. But it certainly doesn't work in Wellsville or Olean or Canisteo. And can we adjust it? Can we make it so it's refine that a little bit so it's better? So there's the constituent service side, there's the policy side, there's the voting side. And in all of those, if you're a strong advocate, a strong voice, and you know your district, I think you can be very effective, even in a situation where the Democrats have the majority. And then, of course, there are issues, as we worked on together when I was in the House, on disability issues. There are issues that are not partisan issues.
Exactly.
And I would love to work on those issues at the state level, just as I did on the federal level. It's something I'm very passionate about. And finding those issues that transcend the partisan divide is difficult, but certainly possible. We've proven that.
All right, we got to take our first break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And joining us in that studio is Joe Sempolinski. I should mention, you see Joe's name on the bottom of the screen. His website is joesempolinski.com, right?
That's correct. Yeah, spelling Sempolinski, a little fun trick for everybody going forward.
Absolutely. Is your family excited about this move?
My family is excited. My wife is very supportive of this. My kids are kind of young. I don't know if they totally understand. They like going to the parades.
Yeah.
My kids like going to county fairs. That's their
And
favorite campaign thing.
That's what it seems like you have to do all the time.
So actually, if you go on the website, there's a picture of me with my kids at the Allegheny County Fair, because that's something that that's a part of this that they love to participate in. So no, they're very supportive. My wife is a high school government teacher.
Perfect.
So she's never run for office herself. I don't know if she would like to do that, but she's certainly, this is in her area of interest and expertise, and she likes to use me as like a case study
so you
to
have
the
to
kids
speak to the
explain
class.
how. Yeah, I've spoken to her class. I brought when I was in Congress, I brought her class down to Washington D.C. We got them on the floor of the House, which was pretty cool for 50 kids from Hinsdale, New York.
Oh yeah, Hinsdale, the horseradish capital of the world.
Hinsdale's a wonderful place.
I like it.
Yeah.
So this is kind of weird, though, going from Congress to Assembly, right? This isn't a common trajectory.
I would say it is not the standard career path.
Right.
That is fair enough. It is unusual. It's not unprecedented for former federal officials to run for state office. That has happened. I know there's a couple state legislators around the country that are former House members. But I would say, it is unusual. But I would hope that it shows to the people, the voters, that I'm about serving the public. This is a wonderful region to live in. There are bad policies coming out of Albany. And if I could make those bad policies a little bit better, make their lives a little bit better, that's what I want to be a part of. That's the job I want to do. That's the role I want to serve. And as I said when I was leaving Congress, if I do that at the state or the federal level, if I do it as an elected official or a staffer, it's all the same. And I feel that's all the same. So to me, when you cast a vote in the House of Representatives and you speak for 750-ish thousand people, that's a real sacred thing. When you cast a vote in the state assembly and you're speaking for still a pretty large group of people, 135-ish thousand people,
is that right? Wow.
That's just as sacred and just as profound a thing. And I'll take every vote in the state assembly just as seriously as I took every vote in the United States House of Representatives. To me, it's it's all the same. The Assembly is the House of Representatives for the state of New York.
Sure.
That's the function it serves. It's the people's house at the state level, just like the U.S. House is the people's house at the federal level.
It's got to be nice, too, for you because you've obviously with what you do being the chairman of the GOP and all that, you know all the assemblymen in this area and the state senators, so you can work with them maybe at a level that most people wouldn't be able to at day one.
That's true. I have great relationships with the folks that are in this area. The 2 state senators that cover this district, because Assembly and Senate districts, they don't go together. They can be all sorts of weird mix and match. But in this case, the 148th Assembly District there's 2 chunks of it. Part of it's represented by Tom O'Mara in the Senate, and part of it's represented by George Borrello in the Senate. They've both endorsed me publicly. So that's a relationship right there where no matter what you do in the Assembly, if you're talking about legislation, you got to find a dancing partner in the Senate. Otherwise, it's really not going to work. And I've got 2 gentlemen that I have long-standing relationships with that are very supportive of what I'm doing, and I know their staffs very well. But then the other Assembly members from the Southern Tier, I have great relationships with, and I have good relationships with. There are situations where other Assembly members in the region are retiring, and I have good relationships with people I think are going to be coming in as freshman Assembly members with me. So all that said, going in with those relationships, again, shortens that learning curve where you have somebody you can go to and say, hey, how should I handle this? Or have you had experience dealing with this type of situation and you're not trying to figure it out on your own? You have people you can lean on who are on your team. And I've had great outreach already from state legislators, even ones that aren't in this region who I know, saying we're excited you're running and we're looking forward to having you as part of the team hopefully next year.
That's great. Find out more at joesompolinsky.com. We got to play a little catch up. Go to another break. Stay with us. Our beautiful view of Market Street there as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. In that studio, Joe Sompolinsky. Hey, Joe, I was just thinking, today's President's Day.
Today is President's Day. And is there an election coming up this year?
And you were voted by your high school class, the man to be most likely to be president.
See,
how appropriate.
You got insider knowledge because you probably have a copy of that yearbook.
Not on me.
So just for the public.
Yes.
Mr. Acom was 1 year behind me in high school at Corning Painted Post West High School. Go Vikings.
Yeah, that's right.
And so he does know what I was voted. There were a lot more embarrassing categories.
Yes.
That were open.
That's when
that
you can
year.
hang your
So I was most likely to be president. I have been unsuccessful in that so far.
So far, who knows the way things are going with you?
Who knows? What'll happen is you get elected president, and then I'll run for city council, whatever. Yeah. We'll do it. We'll do it in whatever order the people desire.
Let's talk about the presidential race. Did you get your Never Surrender high tops?
Not yet. I'm wearing my work shoes, but they actually look.
I would wear them.
They look better than you would think for political stuff.
What a weird thing when that came out.
Yeah.
Why not?
Why not?
It actually seems kind of par for the course, if I'm being honest. So what do you think? I mean, we have the $355 million fraud case. The former President Trump is going to have a tough time campaigning, isn't he?
Well, I think all of this has helped him dramatically so far, because what it has done is there's a big chunk of the Republican primary electorate that just loves President Trump. Right? He's got a very loyal base. And then there was another chunk that liked him, liked his policies, but maybe were ready to think about other candidates.
Sure.
And the really atrocious, unprecedented, undemocratic weaponization of the justice system against him has solidified support within the Republican Party. And even with a lot of independents, if you look at the polls, going, wait a minute, this is not right. To be going after this guy's business, to be coming up with salacious accusations.
Try to kick him off the ballot even?
Trying to kick him off the ballot. How do you defend democracy by taking the most popular candidate in the country off the ballot? Do you not understand what the definition of democracy is?
It's not even your party.
Right.
I mean, it's a primary.
And then to have all that sort of on display every day, and it makes average, well-meaning citizens, independents, Republicans, and moderate Democrats go, ooh, this is not the type of whether you like Donald Trump or don't like Donald Trump, this is not the type of thing that should be happening in America. This is the type of thing that happens in Russia. This is the type of thing that happens in other countries where if you're an opposition leader, you get imprisoned or something else happens, as we learned in Russia. So this is something that is a really dangerous. You want to talk about threats to democracy?
Yeah.
This is a threat to democracy, and so that is something that your average citizen understands. Your average citizen is a smart person and understands that. It has been rocket fuel for Donald Trump in his presidential campaign.
You said it before on the program, and I've quoted you a lot on this, that someone might not like Donald Trump, but they really don't like the deep state.
The average person wants things to be fair and transparent. And it's clear what's going on. Donald Trump is not fair, where one guy has documents, gets charged with all these charges. Another guy, who happens to be the current president, has documents in his garage.
Yeah.
And the word comes down, he's too mentally incompetent to charge, but somehow still okay to run the country.
Yeah.
That's the position of the United States Department of Justice, is that the current president is too incompetent to be charged with documents that he shouldn't have been having. But yeah, it's okay to still run the country.
Yeah.
That is such a dichotomy. That's not fair. And then transparency, you're talking about the deep state. I think you're right, where your average person thinks of America as an open, transparent place, a true republic, where you should be able to see what's going on, and things don't happen as much behind closed doors as it does in other systems. And when you have people who are unaccountable, unelected bureaucrats who are supposed to be executing policy, making policy, who are supposed to be impartial, being partial, it really, really angers your average voter, even ones that are not terribly political. And it should. And they're 100% right. The people are smart. The people are not stupid. They understand what's going on.
People don't like bureaucrats anyway. So
no, just as a general rule, especially when they are abusing that position. There's nothing wrong per se with somebody doing a good job if they are a government official. But you should be, again, you're not a policy maker. The elected officials are policy makers. You execute the policy of the policy makers, those who are actually accountable to the people. And you do it in a way that, Lady Justice is supposed to be blind. That's not just for the courts. That's also for the executive branch.
Right.
And you're supposed to be treated impartially. And clearly, that is not the case. Again, whether you like Donald Trump or not, it is clearly not the case with how Donald Trump is being treated.
Isn't it interesting how, when you look at the extreme side to the Democrat Party, where they can actually look at this and be okay with it.
Yeah.
There's that weirdness that they can't think, well, what if this was happening to Biden? What if this was happening to whoever's next?
And I think it's that Trump derangement syndrome,
really
where they've turned Trump into this boogeyman in their own minds that anything is fair game to deal with that white guy because he's so bad, right? Quote unquote. Yeah. And that is a dangerous place to be.
Yeah.
That is a dangerous place to be as a country, that somehow the leading opposition figure is such a threat that anything can be done to him is okay, and we don't worry about the precedent it sets. You don't worry about the norms it breaks. You don't worry about the erosion of democracy.
4 years, 8 years, 10
That
years.
is a dangerous place for a society to be. And I would ask my people that are listening that are Democrats, that even if they support President Biden, to say, really, is this really the country you want to live in, where you are treated this way because you are running for president of the United States and you are running against the current administration? That is not what America is all about.
And I think that's one of the ways that the media will be able to avoid his rallies, in the same where Biden won't have to debate, because all they have to say is, well, we don't want to give him a platform.
Right.
Because we've heard that term before.
We don't want to normalize.
Yeah,
it.
normalize him.
And that's another dangerous place to be. He is the leading candidate for president of the United States. He's leading in the general election polls. He's dominant in the primary election polls. The primary's over. He has the support of more people than anyone else for president in the election in November.
Yeah.
And to somehow say that person shouldn't have a platform, that is an affront to the democratic process.
Just received this from a viewer. Joe, all the insanity going on in government, who do they answer to? Who's actually causing it? Who's actually running things?
Well, that's a good question, because, I mean, in theory, it's supposed to be the people.
Right.
It's supposed to be, and that's where I think people get frustrated with the bureaucrats, because bureaucrats are not, they don't get elected every 2 years or 4 years or 6 years, right? They're career people. So when they're doing things they shouldn't do, people get frustrated. And I think what also they're alluding to, maybe, and I apologize to the viewer if I'm misinterpreting your question, but there is a question about, who is President Biden in charge?
Right.
Is he really calling all the shots? Or are there people on his staff or people that maybe former President Obama or worked for former President Obama?
Sure.
Is he being manipulated in some way where he's sort of the front man? And that question ties back to the competency issue, where
Right.
like, he's not competent to be charged with someone who's competent to be president of the United States. So I think his age,
Yeah.
his apparent cognitive slowdown, to put a nice phrase on it,
Right.
has led to these type of questions of, all right, the ship is going in a direction that I don't like, whether it's on immigration, whether it's on the economy, whether it's on whatever your particular concern is. And you not only have a concern about the direction the ship's going, you have a concern about whether the captain even knows he's the captain.
Right.
And that's a dangerous place to be as well. I think that may be where the viewer is going, where who's really in charge here.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the vice president.
No.
Because she's out to lunch too.
Yeah.
But somebody's making big decisions, and
Your feelings have to be hurt after everybody says no, this can't be Harris. Like no one's even.
would say
no one's ever defended her.
It is a situation that shows just how badly she's done.
Yeah.
Where you would think if she was anything less than a disaster, the Democrats would have already swapped her in, because
Right.
this vice president's always the obvious successor for the president. But that's not what has happened.
I mean, think about the fact that she was the border czar, and look at how bad this. I mean, the
Yeah.
one thing they put her in charge of
has only gotten worse and worse and worse over time.
and she's like non-existent.
And
on it.
and it's not like she came out with a policy and it bombed.
Right.
It's just she didn't do
It's almost like you ignored your boss's orders.
anything.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, solve the border, and then it's like, I'm going to go do something completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's,
Maybe he won't notice.
That's quite an indictment of her.
We got to take another short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Well, my mic is on. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox being joined by Joe Sempolinski. Joe, her report had to be interesting because, okay, you're not going to get in any kind of trouble, but in there was probably the harshest language that you could ever see in a report like that.
That was a political disaster
Yes.
for President Biden, because it highlighted all the things that people are concerned about with him personally.
Right.
It did it in a way that was like shocking.
Yes.
We're talking about they say he didn't remember what years he was vice president.
Yeah.
If I was vice president, I remember what year
You would
I
hope.
was vice president.
Yeah.
They said in there he didn't remember when his son died.
Which would make sense because of how many times he said he died in Iraq
Yeah,
and things
he's
like
had
that.
some. I mean, my understanding of the president's position is that the cancer was somehow related to him being in service. But that's not how he's been saying it.
No.
That's not how he's been saying it to Gold Star families whose kids were actually killed in combat.
Yeah.
So he's muddled that in a very offensive way.
Mm-hmm.
And so.
And then they have the press conference to smooth this all
And
over.
that wasn't good.
And that was
Mexico,
Yeah.
Egypt, so he's. That was.
Someone should have been fired over that press conference.
So he wasn't indicted. So
Right.
that's
Yeah.
that.
So it's a win.
That's I guess. But everything else around it that got lost in the sauce of you now have sort of on paper.
Right.
Hey, we talked to the president. He didn't remember the most crucial moments of
Right.
his entire existence, what years they were.
Mm-hmm.
What is more memorable in your life than being vice president or when your son died?
Right.
Like, if you can't remember that, you have major situations. And I'm clearly coming from interviews they did with him.
Yeah.
So it's not something you make up out of thin air.
No.
And then he tries to save it, and he can't quite deliver that. He wasn't exactly doing jumping jacks up on the stage there. So that was a political catastrophe.
Yes.
For the President of the United States.
And because it forced the media to cover something they have not wanted to
That's
cover.
right.
And I woke up that next morning and I was watching, I'm not going to say which news, but I was watching it. And they still the media had to go, yeah, Biden's been showing some real bad signs here. But Trump, and
they desperately wanted not to talk about this. And yeah, you're right. It was forced into the forefront. You couldn't not talk about it. And then Biden calling the press conference.
yeah.
I don't know if that was a wise decision,
I
because
think
then
in
now
hindsight.
you're highlighting it in all the lights focused, and you can't avoid it because he's calling the press conference.
Right.
He's the one talking about it. It's Biden. You can't not talk. It's the president.
Yeah.
So it's that was really bad.
And now he's got all these people in his own party. You saw Representative Tlaib is trying to say don't vote for him in the Michigan primary.
Yeah.
And I heard Van Jones say, and I didn't realize this, but younger people are turning on him, unfortunately, because of his stance with Israel. And he's starting to get waver a little bit on that, but I guess young people are calling him Genocide Joe because of that?
Yes. Yeah,
So-
there's the far left, the ultra far left.
Yeah.
There is an element of sort of anti-Israel,
Yeah.
getting up into anti-Semitism in some cases. There's a disconnect within chunks of the Democratic Party,
Right.
and it seems to be there's plenty of young people and all sorts
sure.
that are pro-Israel, whatever. But there's this sort of element of the hardcore progressive activist base,
Right.
that for whatever reason
Yeah.
is got this sympathy for people that are anti-Israel. Now, obviously, I don't like civilian casualties
Sure.
regardless, but this is something where to somehow say that Israel is perpetuating a genocide
Right.
in Gaza really doesn't make sense. I mean, up until the Hamas attack, Gaza was self-governing. Hamas was the government of Gaza. Israel was not administering the government in Gaza. The population of Gaza has dramatically grown over the
Yeah.
last generation. So that clearly doesn't indicate some sort of genocide. And now there's a war going on, and it's a tragic thing all around. But the war would end today if Hamas released all the hostages
Right.
and stood down. The war would end. So that's a good indication to tell sort of which side is the aggressor. If Israel stood down,
Right.
Hamas would slaughter everyone in Israel.
Exactly.
If Hamas stood down, the war would be over. So you do the math on who's committing a genocide or who wants to commit
Right.
a genocide.
Right. We're going to talk a little bit more. I want to take a short break, but we're going to talk a little bit more about presidential. But we haven't talked about redistricting. We got that coming up. So stay with us. Get your questions to Joe. You can text me at that number on the bottom of the screen. You can always check out his website, joesemplinsky.com. We'll be right back. Back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox joining us in the studio, Joe Semplinsky, as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Joe, there's a piece out today, Inside the Plot to Replace Elderly Joe Biden. Do you think there is a plot?
I think there's maybe more of a plot now than there was a couple months ago.
Yeah.
But procedurally, it's very difficult because we're very far along. Politico had a very good article about this, about what would you have to do that. And even if somebody who is some dynamic super candidate who I don't know exists.
Gavin Newsom.
I don't know if let's not give him any compliments. But if there was, imagine there was some hypothetical, wonderful, super Democrat candidate. I think there's only like 5 or 6 states that haven't already passed their filing deadlines. And even if you won every delegate from all those states, you don't get the number of delegates in California.
No.
So from a delegate perspective, there's no way to beat him. Dean Phillips is not the answer. He's already on all the ballots, but he's polling way behind. So he's going to have the majority of delegates going into the convention. And at that point, the only way he goes is either voluntarily.
Right.
And if he goes before the convention, then the convention can pick literally anyone. If he goes after the convention, I think it goes to the DNC, can pick anyone.
Which is kind of how it's normally anyway.
Yeah.
Ask Bernie.
And then if you have a situation where he leaves involuntarily, you're now talking about incapacitation or death. There's really no way to sit him down and say, hey, it's time to go, if he doesn't want to go.
Right.
It's too far along for that. So if Joe Biden is physically going and wants to be the Democratic nominee for president, he's going to be the Democratic nominee for president no matter what any establishment folks want to change. It's just too far along in the legal process.
All right, we got a question from a viewer. Why does the Republican Party allow the Democrats to win so many elections with their abortion issues, while Republicans never talk about legalizing full-term abortion? My Democrat friends don't even know what it is and mortified when they find out. A person will be jailed if they did that to a dog. Please make this a conversation. They need to be educated about what it really is. Thank you so much, and this is why I read it. Love the show.
This is a really good question, actually.
Yeah, that is a great question.
Democrats, their party are radicals on abortion.
Yeah.
The law in the state of New York allows abortion if you just claim a threat to the health of the mother, and health is not defined in the statute, up until the point of birth. That's a pretty radical position. We had a bill that I was a co-sponsor of when I was in the House that it didn't have anything to do with abortion. It just said if the baby's born, if the abortion fails, you have to provide it medical care. That bill was blocked when I was in the House. It's since come up when the Republicans take the majority. Every Republican voted for it. One Democrat voted for it, and one Democrat voted present. And again, it has nothing to do with abortion. The baby's already born.
Right.
So the Democratic position has no compromise whatsoever, and it is abortion up to the very end of pregnancy, where a child could be viable. That's a radical position. So, no, I agree with the viewer that that's a conversation we have to say, all right, if we're going to have a conversation about this particular issue, let's have a conversation about where everybody's position really is. And the viewer is 100% correct. I think there's a lot of Democratic voters that all the polls show the overwhelming majority of voters are against abortion late in pregnancy. And I think a lot of Democratic voters don't realize just how much that is the position of their party. So I'm a pro-life candidate. I was a pro-life congressman. I have a daughter with Down syndrome, so I take the abortion issue personally very seriously, because most pregnancies where there's a diagnosis of Down syndrome, the pregnancy is terminated. That's a tragedy of gargantuan proportions. So let's have a fair conversation on just how extreme one of the parties is, and then I think there are places where we can come together on, well, can we do better for making sure that women who are involved in pregnancies get medical care? Can we do better for mothers that make the choice to have their kid? Can we get them better child care or child support, or things that they need to care for their child, or workforce training, or these type of things to support both the mother and the child when they make the choice to have the child? That may be something where we can come together. But I'm a pro-life candidate. I'm proud to be a pro-life candidate.
One more before we go to break. This is from a viewer. Impeachment of Mr. Biden will only serve the Democratic Party. The best thing the Republicans can do is wait until October to present the evidence against him. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's sort of a strategic argument, right? You know, what is the best way to deal with Biden? Obviously, we've had situations with impeachment that have been a little interesting over the last few years.
Yes.
If you have a clear case for fraud, theft, corruption, these sort of things, I think you do have to bring that impeachment. You can't allow that to go on. But I think where the viewer's getting to is knowing that impeachment is stage one of the process.
Right.
You still have to have a trial in the Senate. So the Secretary of Homeland Security's been impeached. He's still the Secretary of Homeland Security, and he's not going anywhere because he's going to be acquitted in the Senate. So you got to think it all the way through anytime you do anything strategically in politics. But I think it depends on the merits of the case, depends on the evidence that's been presented. But Joe Biden needs to not be president, and I think that'll probably be at the end of his term. Yeah. But if there's a clear case for corruption that can convince even Democratic senators to convict him, then that's a very different situation.
All right, we got to take another short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. And we are back with Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Joining us in that studio, Joe Semplinsky. Joe, we have a lot to get to and not a lot of time to get there. What do you think about Nikki Haley, though, coming up in South Carolina? I don't quite understand her rationale here.
I think she's going to lose.
Yes.
That's this Saturday. And, yeah, I agree with you. I don't see where this is going.
Where's the upside?
She's lost the first two states. Yeah. Trump's won. She's going to her home state.
Right.
So will it be closer there than it would be in any other state? Yeah, sure. Yeah. But she's still going to lose by like 25, 30 points probably. And so if you can't get within 3 touchdowns at home, how are you going to get anywhere different on the road?
Yeah. What's Super Tuesday do?
She's going to get smoked in every state on Super Tuesday. So I don't know what the strategy is here, because she's not going to accumulate a lot of delegates.
No.
So it's not like she could have some sort of leverage going into some sort of weird convention or something. So I would have thought that it would have been more like what happened with DeSantis. Where DeSantis loses he put all his chips on Iowa, loses Iowa, says, "Oh, I'm going to New Hampshire," and then a couple days later goes, "All right, it's done."
Yeah.
I figured that was what was going to happen with Haley after she put all her chips on New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And do you really want to get beat that bad at home?
As a young person, I mean, she's got a future if she wants it.
Yeah, for presidential politics, she's very young.
Yeah.
So I don't think she's making smart decisions right now.
No.
And the primary is over. Donald Trump's going to be the Republican nominee. So I just don't see where there's some sort of, oh, this happens and then that happens, other thing happens that ends up with her. There is no scenario I can think of where she ends up being the nominee for president. I don't see what she's thinking.
No, me either. All right, we're going to jump around to a lot of topics. We didn't even mention this yet. What did you think about the redistricting process and the new maps?
Yeah, so everybody knows we're going through another congressional redistricting. It hasn't affected the state legislature as of yet, but the map came out from the commission, and everybody was expecting some sort of divide between the two parties or something that was like an aggressive Democratic map or something. It was very different. It was 9-1. There was the vote, and it wasn't dramatic changes. It was once you get lower Hudson Valley south, there are basically hardly any changes to the current map. And up here in the districts where most of your viewers reside, Mr. Langworthy's district, he added in this draft, I think it's not finalized, Tioga County, which used to be in this district. I represented most of Tioga County. I was in Congress. Back into the district, loses a little bit of northern Steuben, a little bit of northern Schuyler, some changes around Buffalo, Niagara County area, but not dramatic changes at all. And it looked like a map that maybe there would be one fewer Republican than currently. So we'll see what the legislature does. There's already some Republicans calling to vote for this particular map just because it's so much better than we thought we were going to get.
Which is kind of sad.
I don't know. People got to make their own decisions how they're going to vote on that. But I was a little bit surprised, and we'll see where it goes. I know there are people on the far left, including the minority leader of the House of Representatives, Mr. Jeffries, signaling to Albany Democrats, don't vote for this, because they want to go more aggressive. They want to take out more Republicans. But we'll see. It'll be a very interesting vote for the more moderate Democrat state legislators. They're going to have a real tricky vote on this. I'll be watching it very closely, as will everybody in the country.
There's an interesting piece of Politico this morning that says the House, meaning the majority in the House, could come down to the end of the day with Mark Molinaro.
I saw that article.
Yeah.
And Mark's district actually got a little bit more Republican in this particular map, which was very surprising because he is this crucial swing election, and suddenly he's got a little bit more Republican territory, which I would have never guessed that in a million years.
No, me either.
Mark's a good candidate. So if that's the guy that's the tipping one, he gets out there and he works, and he's a good congressman as far as making sure that he is working his district and talking to the people. So he's a formidable campaigner. So if that's the guy that's the tipping point, we could do a lot worse.
We'll take it. We got to take one more short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. And we are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I'm still on the wrong screen there. There we go. All right, Joe, we've got a couple quick questions before we wrap up today's edition of Frankly Speaking. First of all, let's talk about the most important time of year for you. The season you love more than Christmas.
Time of the year. You're talking about petition season.
Yes.
So for myself, who's now running for office, but anybody that's running for office this year, not for statewide office or the president. We don't do petitions for president. We don't do petitions generally for statewide office. They have a different mechanism. But for Congress and anything smaller than that, you want to run, you got to go out and get signatures from the people. And that is a defined legal window, and that starts 1 week from tomorrow. Wow. And we will be out and about, and we're having a meeting of the Republican committee, and we're going to get petitions out for folks. Some people may be running for town board.
Yeah, no, I won last year. So.
And these things. You got to.
How many do you need for assembly?
500.
Oof.
500 unique, valid, active Republican voters who live in the 148th Assembly District is my minimum. So I'm going to try and get a lot more than that.
Right.
But it is very important. So it's a great time to get involved in the Republican Party. If you have a candidate that's running that you're very passionate about, then if you go get them signatures, they will love you until the end of the world.
Yes, you'll probably even get a thank you card most likely.
Most definitely.
February 26th at 6 p.m. at the Bath Fire Department is a petition meeting for us. I wanted to mention just quickly about Santos' seat and Suozzi winning that seat. Yeah. I know they're trying to make this like some type of bellwether, like, oh, see, all Republicans are going to lose in November. It was such a unique scenario.
This is a very unique scenario.
Yes.
One, you had a snowstorm, so that's one thing. But two, you had the situation where Mr. Santos is sort of a walking unique scenario. And don't forget, Tom Suozzi was the congressman before Santos. He had been there for 3 terms. he had been county executive of Nassau County. He had run for governor in a primary unsuccessfully, but twice.
Right.
He was a mayor in that district. So this is a name brand guy in that district. So he's world famous in northern Nassau County. So it was he's a formidable candidate. But nevertheless, you'd like to do better than 8 points. But I would caution every race everywhere in the country is unique. So to immediately project from that onto anything nationwide, especially something outside of New York or something outside of the New York metropolitan area, take that maybe with a grain of salt.
Yeah, and we've been talking about this on the show. Republicans have to do a better job of early voting.
Yeah, this was a quintessential example. I know there's been a big push from the state party, from Donald Trump, from everybody to bank your vote. And the reason being is exactly what happened in the 3rd Congressional District, where Democrats got out voted early. Suddenly there's a snowstorm on Election Day.
Right.
And so turnout drops on Election Day. The Democrats had already all voted.
Yeah.
The Republicans, it was tough for them to get to the polls. So that's the argument that's been made from every portion of the Republican Party since these rules have been changed. You don't have to like the rules, but they are the rules.
Right.
And this is the perfect case study as to why, if at all possible, it is good to bank your vote and vote in the early voting period. Just so if something happens on Election Day, it's all right. You've already voted. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. I think, we've covered just about everything. I'm just looking at my notes. Joe, anything local going on other than petition season?
Well, that is the big thing. As far as local races, obviously state legislative races, Mr. Palmisano represents most of Steuben County.
He was on the show on Friday.
Wonderful man. He's running for re-election. Senator Romero represents all of Steuben County. He's running for re-election. Sheriff Allard is up for re-election. He's running for re-election. We have a judicial county judge race. We have a couple folks that are looking at that. We'll see where that goes. There aren't a lot of local little town races. But it's mostly the county and state stuff this year because it's the presidential year.
Right.
But presidency is important, but don't forget these other races as well, where your vote counts even more than it does for the presidency.
And going back to your point, that's why petitions are so important. If you help these candidates out, like you said, they'll love you forever. So how can people get involved in the Republican Party?
Well, reach out to me. My email is joe.semplinsky@gmail.com. Send me a note. Send me an email if you want to be involved.
Wow, that's simple. So
I'm accessible.
You are very accessible, and you can find out more at joesemplinsky.com about your assembly race. I'm excited about this. Joe, is there anything before we go about the campaign that you're looking for? Because you have campaigned so often. You got Congress, you had to campaign.
Yeah.
And then, you're always helping other people with their campaign.
Yep.
So is there a part that you look forward to the most in this?
My kids love the county fair.
Okay, so you got the county fair.
Kids like the county fairs. I like just getting out and talking to people because you learn where people are actually at. And it's unvarnished. People will tell you what you think. Most people, if you knock on their door, 95, 98% of them are super friendly.
Yeah.
And even if they're of a different political persuasion, they want to tell you what they think.
Yeah.
And that real human interaction of being out there and talking to folks is sort of irreplaceable and wonderful. And the people of the Southern Tier have been so good to me in my entire life.
Yeah.
This is where I'm from. This region of the state is where I'm from, and they have been so good to me over my life to be able to give back to them, and they have embraced me as a candidate the first time and now this time so rapidly, so quickly. It means a lot to me and my family, and I just want to do a good job for the folks.
Well, I've heard from so many people, I'm not just saying this because you're in front of me, but that would say that, I wish Joe would have ran for Congress again. And that's not anything on Nick. Nick does a great job. Nick does a great job. So I think this has made a lot of people excited, and that's why because you got a lot of coverage. I don't want to talk about the competition, but you got a lot of coverage on Friday.
People have been excited, and I think I hope that means they thought I did a good job in Congress. Yeah. Again, I think Nick's doing a good job. I have a great working relationship with Congressman Langworthy. I was just talking to his staff yesterday.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can all work together.
Yeah.
And this is the closest analogy to the U.S. House at the state level is the state assembly.
Yeah.
So I think I'm very well prepared to do a good job and be of service to the community that I live in, and the community that's really embraced me.
Couple comments from viewers before we go. We are counting on you, Joe, to spread your wisdom and common sense like a plague upon the foolish tyranny that is upon us.
Wow.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, okay.
I think they're voting for me. That's good. Thank you.
Is that your new bumper sticker?
I don't know. We'll see. Well, thank you very much.
And another comment. We need a longer show with Joe.
A longer show with Joe?
Yeah. 1 hour is not enough, Joe.
1 hour is not enough. No. Wow.
Yeah.
is somebody who
It's nice that your mom watches.
is free in the morning.
Everybody uses that joke.
Right, yeah.
Everybody uses that joke whenever there's compliments. Well, Joe, thanks for giving us so much time this morning, and let's talk about the campaign again soon, okay?
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate it.
All right, join us tomorrow morning starting at 7 for Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.